Are you looking for new books to read? Do you like finding a new special author? Are you tired of the same old books from the same old authors? Well then, welcome to Discovered Wordsmiths, a podcast where you can hear from fantastic new authors. Join Stephen Schneider as he finds and talks to authors you may not know, but authors that have worked hard to write great new books. Hear about their book and why you should check it out. So sit back and listen to today's Discovered Wordsmith.
Lori, welcome to the Discovered Wordsmith podcast. How are you doing today?
Okay, how are you?
Good. And just of note to everyone that's watching the video, you're at the local library. They offer rooms and you can rent to get video meetings and do these types of things. So I'm a big proponent of pushing the library. So it's good to see some things that the libraries do that people may not know about. So they have meeting rooms and all sorts of great things.
Right.
Okay. So Lori, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you like to do outside of writing.
I was born in Warrensville, Ohio. I've lived east, I've lived west, but my favorite is the east side. I like the east side. And right now I live in South Euclid.
Okay. All right. What do you like to do besides writing?
I like to read, actually. I actually love to read and I love to write.
Good.
And with my book, I was able to create a book because everything that happened, like experiences I've had in my life, I was able to make a book out of experiences that I've been through. And I love to write.
Okay.
So that's how the book came about, is I just had experiences that were able to create a book.
Okay. And when did you start writing, and what made you finally start or want to write this book?
Well, like I said, I had things I went through, like different experiences, and I would write them down. Like I would write write down things that happened to me. And, the experiences I've had, like I said, was making me able to create a book.
Okay. And have you written all your life, or is this recent?
Well, I've written my whole life, like things that have happened to me, but I didn't create a book until 2015 is when I started to create a book.
Okay.
And my first book was titled, "What is a Schizophrenic Supposed to Look Like?" And and the reason I titled it that is because people would see me on medication, doing really well on medication, and they'd be like, "How could you have schizophrenia? You don't look like you have schizophrenia." So then I was like, okay, well, what is a schizophrenic supposed to look like?
Some stereotype movie thing.
So, yeah. And then a lot of people, there is so much stigma with the name schizophrenic. Like if you say schizophrenic instead of schizophrenia, people have a problem with that, calling yourself a schizophrenic. They prefer to say a person with schizophrenia. So I decided that the first book, I was going to retire the title, and I changed some of the content in the manuscript and came out with the new book, Schizophrenia, Your Guide to Surviving and Thriving. And the things that have happened to me have been able to make me an expert on schizophrenia with things that have happened to me.
And you mentioned schizophrenia versus schizophrenic. Explain what the differences would be and what people get so upset about.
I don't know. I guess because it, but they used to have groups like Alcoholics Anonymous. So I never really had a problem calling myself a schizophrenic. But a lot of people I've dealt with, they have a problem with saying or calling themselves a schizophrenic. So that's why I changed some of the content in the title to Schizophrenia, Your Guide to Surviving and Thriving, because people were so offended, when I would call myself a schizophrenic.
I find that interesting
So,
because my one stepson has autism, and my wife, who has dealt with it her whole life, or his whole life, she's dealt with it, that she's had people get mad at her because she said he's autistic, and they're like, no, you need to say he has autism. And they get mad
Right.
at her when she says, I'm an autistic mom. They're like, no, you can't say that, it's demeaning. And she's like, what do you mean? So I just find that interesting. It's kind of across the board.
Right. And there was just so much stigma that I had to kind of change the whole structure of the book.
Okay.
So, but the new book I'm very proud of. It's my favorite one, out of the whole books I've done. And I feel it's very helpful. It explains, different things that can help you survive and thrive with this illness.
Okay. Like what? Give us some examples of what's in the book. Because obviously it's not a fiction book. It's nonfiction. It's based on your own life. And it's not really a memoir. It's more of a handbook, a guide to self-help with.
Well, it's a little bit memoir and it's a little bit self-help.
Okay.
So it's kind of a mixture of both.
Okay.
But I talk a little bit about how important it is to find a psychiatrist that you really, really like. I've had some doctors that I wasn't too crazy about. But the doctor I have now, I'm very happy with. Sometimes, you may have to go through a few doctors before you find one that you really connect with and that you really like. And so I talk about, finding the right doctor. I talk about how to improve your health, through vitamins and supplements and exercise and eating right. And I give different tips of places you can go and see if you have a mental illness. They have a bunch of wonderful places you can go that I mention in the book. I was a volunteer for NAMI on the psychiatric ward for 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
And it was very interesting to be on the psych ward because I was able to talk with the patients and able to help them and connect with them.
So did that help you shape the book and do rewrites and
Right,
things?
because I have experience. I've been hospitalized myself 6 months of my life, 3 months in 1990 and 3 months in 1991.
Okay.
So I've been in the psych ward, 6 months of my life, but when I was on the psych ward, after I was stabilized and I was volunteering on the psych ward, I was really able to help some of the patients and give them advice and tips on how to stay out of the hospital, so that they don't have to stay in a hospital.
Okay. And, a lot of times I ask, what made you want to write this book? But that's obvious. What made you want to write this book? And it's a very personal book.
Right.
And it's traditionally published. Is that correct?
It's what?
Traditionally published?
No, I actually self-published.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. That's what I meant. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually self-published through Amazon. I had, my book journey is kind of strange how it happened. I've always wanted to write a book and I was never sure what title of what kind of book I was going to write because I always wanted to write a book. So I actually ended up going to a writer's group. Before I even knew anything about publishing or anything, I just started out at a writer's group. And that's how I met you, through Dave Van Horn, who was the one who ran the writers group before I was even published.
Okay.
So, and then after that, after the writers group, I left the writers group when they moved. They used to be on the east side and then they moved downtown.
Yeah.
And I wasn't able to get there anymore, so I stopped going. But I had a friend of a friend that had his own publishing company. And he knew how to download manuscripts to the Amazon website, because you have to download your manuscript and get it approved.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually helped me do that. And he was a friend of a friend. So I paid very little to get the book published. Unfortunately, the original publisher that did the self-publishing died earlier this year.
Oh, that's a shame.
But it was really cool knowing him and meeting him, because he actually had a job on the psychiatric ward. So when he helped me publish my book, he had already had experience with mental illness, because he was actually a worker on a psych ward.
Okay.
So, and he told me a lot of stories that he went through. And he wrote some books too, but like I said, unfortunately, he just died a couple months ago. So, but he's the one that got me started. And then somehow I came to the event at the South Euclid Library, which is, it's the Writers Center, the library in South Euclid. And they had a lot of writers conferences and writers speakers. And when I went to one of the speakers, I ended up re-hooking up with Dave Van Horn, who was from the writers group. And then he's been helping me market the book.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, it just kind of happened, and I had, no clue. All I knew is I wanted to write a book. I just didn't know like how it was going to happen, or, or things like that. So, but I'm very proud of it. I feel I could really help people, and that's my goal, is to help people. And that's why I volunteered on the psychiatric ward,
Mm-hmm.
Because I like helping the mentally ill. I have compassion, understanding, and, it doesn't always have to be a negative thing. It can turn into a positive thing if you take your medicine and surround yourself with the right people.
Got it. So what has been, besides people telling you to use schizophrenia instead of schizophrenic, what's been the feedback from other people with this book?
Well, there's always people that like it, and there's always people that don't like it.
Right.
And Dave just told me that's just how it is. Some people like it, some don't. But I wrote the book to help people. So that's my goal. And, I try to make it a positive book, not a negative book.
Okay. And it's available on Amazon, anywhere else?
No.
Okay. So it's strictly on Amazon at the moment. Do you have plans to expand to other outlets?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you have any plans to expand it to other outlets?
Well, Dave is helping me market it, but when you self-publish, it's very hard because you have to do all the marketing yourself.
Right.
So it's very hard to promote it.
Right.
But I also attend NAMI groups, and I've sold a couple of books at the NAMI groups I go to. NAMI is the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill.
Yes.
And they have wonderful groups and programs on mental illness.
Okay. And do you have any plans for a follow-up book?
No, I think I'm done. I think I'm done. I just, every day I still run into experiences in my life with stigma and stuff, like you just have to be like really careful how you disclose your illness, because a lot of people, when they hear the word schizophrenia or schizophrenic, they just like, they treat you differently. So there is still a lot of stigma. But in the book too, I mentioned that, my first book, What is a Schizophrenic Supposed to Look Like? Is that how do you know who has schizophrenia just by looking at them?
Right.
I mean, it could just be someone in a crowd. And it's like the only way that you really disclose your schizophrenia is when you talk to yourself in public, like if you're not on medication and you were to talk to yourself, that would be like a clue that you would have schizophrenia. And
But even then,
and
I would even then I would think that's not a definite. I mean, I've been known to talk to myself, and I've never been diagnosed. It's just sometimes, I'm thinking about something. So I think part of our problem is sometimes people want to self-diagnose others, and then they have a stigma attached to them when it may not even be true. And I assume there's like different intensities or levels of schizophrenia. Is that correct?
well, some people are actually more high functioning than others. And that's because maybe the doctor is not the greatest, or maybe there's different antipsychotic pills you can take. I'm on the antipsychotic clozapine, which is the best of the best.
Okay.
So, because I've tried all different kinds of antipsychotics, and that's the only one that worked for me and gave me my life back. But there's many antipsychotics out there. It's just finding the right one for your chemistry and your system. So, but some of them, like I said, are better than others. Like some of the older antipsychotics aren't as good. The newer ones are much better.
And I assume you mentioned you talk about all these different types of things. So anyone that may be suffering, or even somebody who has a loved one that's suffering, they can refer to your book and get some information on that to help them out.
Yeah. And, a lot of people, sometimes they get mad at me that I try to push medication, because people don't want the side effects and stuff. But with schizophrenia, there's no cure right now. There's like no cure. So if you don't take medication, and the right medication, your quality of life is just not as good as it could be if you took medicine.
Right.
So I still push medication, even though people get mad at me that I'm pushing medication.
Right.
But there's a cure, and that's the only thing that can control it.
Right. And it's one of those things. I think I've dealt with some of this with my family, certain family members, various issues, not schizophrenia, but some other mental health problems, disorders. And you're right, there's a big stigma in our country. And then sometimes these things aren't like you can have a cure. It's not like you're going to take a regimen of medicine and be cured, or have an operation and be cured. They tried that back in the day with lobotomies and things like that, and it didn't work. So sometimes the best you can do is learn how to deal with it and handle it the best you can. And most of the time for these type of issues, that involves some medication. And if you don't take the medication, it makes your life a lot worse.
Right. And there's many illnesses out there that require medication, like high blood pressure,
Yes,
cholesterol,
yes,
different things that you might need medication for. And the medicine is there to help you, not harm you, so you can cope with whatever your illness is.
yes. And I think in our culture, it's still, like you said, a lot of stigma on some of these things. So there hasn't been as much research, as much testing, to see how to help some of these problems. People just want to ignore it and don't want to deal with it. And I think books like yours help bring that out to light more.
Right. And just like for me, being on medication for the rest of my life, unfortunately, I have to take it for the rest of my life. There's other ways you can be healthy. You can exercise, you can eat healthy, you can take healthy supplements and still be healthy staying on your antipsychotic med, you can still be healthy.
And being healthy overall, I'm sure helps anyway. Excuse me. Because, excuse me. I'm sure your doctors have probably told you, eat right, exercise, get good sleep. It just helps the medicine help you. When the medicine has to fight because you're tired or you're not eating the right foods, it lessens its impact and it's worse for you.
Well, like for me, if I didn't take my medication every night before bed, I wouldn't be able to fall asleep at night. And that's when, people with schizophrenia, when they're having an episode and they're not on medication, they could stay up all night and not sleep at all. I was up all night, before I got diagnosed with schizophrenia, I was up like all night, like really late at night, getting no sleep. So sleep is very important. And now that I'm on meds, I used to get 5 hours of sleep and feel great. But now on meds, I need 12 hours of sleep. So the side effect of my med is it makes me really tired and I need 12 hours of sleep. But you just work your schedule around the sleep that you need.
Okay. And going back, you said you like to read and you do a lot of reading.
Should I take this mask off?
Yeah, it's probably, and there's no one else in there with you, right? Yeah.
I'm getting hot in the mask.
You said at the beginning that you like to read. So what are some books you like to read and some authors you like?
I love true stories or self-help books, exercise, diet, and I'm also into beauty books. Before I got ill in high school, I took cosmetology. And don't ask how I did it, but I got a nail technician license when I was right before I was diagnosed with schizophrenia. So it was very hard for me to go to school and get that license, that manicurist license. So, but I've always liked, the beauty field, and I kind of like to read beauty magazines or beauty books or things like that. That's just my, my little hobby I like to do is just, read books like that. And I like to read books about mental illness and other people's stories and, how they coped and what they did. There's a ton of books on schizophrenia. So, it's hard to see them all online because they have so many. But everybody's journey with schizophrenia is different. So, reading a variety of books, could be a good thing because you hear other people's stories too.
Right. Okay. And besides the library, do you have any bookstores you like to go to?
I actually love the bookstore. I love the library and I love the bookstores. I like Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
I like Half Price Books. They always have great books.
Yeah.
And just, I love to read and write. So
good. All right. Before we go, get done with the first half of the podcast, we're not completely done yet, but tell all the people out there that may be interested in your book or may have someone that is suffering from the same problem, why they should get your book.
Because I can give them some insight on having the illness myself. I can give insight to, different problems that they could, come up with struggling. And the main thing is your family has to understand your illness. And unfortunately, my boyfriend has bipolar. And his dad just, he just doesn't understand mental illness. He doesn't think that he needs medication. And he said, you never used to be depressed. And, but then his mom is very supportive and she went to the NAMI classes to learn about it. So luckily for me, my mom was very, very supportive and helpful. She would visit me every day on the psych ward. You know, when I was in the hospital, she'd visit me every day. But it's sad when you don't have family members that can't understand your illness or help you. So anytime we talk about mental illness to his dad, he just, you know, he just doesn't get it. So we just don't even bother talking, and he still takes his meds. And, you know, and my boyfriend's the same way I am. And he's on this clozapine as well, because he has schizoaffective, you know, plus bipolar. And he takes the clozapine too. And he, you know, he's on the same one I am, and, you know, he's doing very well too.
Good.
So.
All right. Well, you know, Lori, I appreciate you taking some time talking to everybody about this. It's a tough subject for people sometimes, and they don't want to talk about it.
Right.
So.
Right. And and also there still is a lot of stigma. Like, yes. I had, one of my boyfriend's neighbors found out that I had schizophrenia and that I wrote a book, and she read it and she was like, oh yeah, it's a great book. And I asked her, I guess she knew someone who was blogging, like doing blogs. And so, but she told me, she says, if you call my friend to discuss doing blogs, she said, don't say that you have mental illness or schizophrenia, just say you want to start a blog. So right then and there, that was stigma right there, because she read my book and then she turned around and said, you know, if you ask my friend about blogging, you know, don't say you have a mental illness.
Right. Yeah. So
I was like kind of very upset about that. It was almost like she had the stigma too, you know.
Right.
So, and she was kind of just a stranger reading my book, because I guess she came over my boyfriend's apartment and saw my book on the desk, and then that's when she wanted to read it. But do you see what I'm saying? How even now, after I've written the book, I'm still having experiences where people have the stigma, you know, like, don't mention you're mentally ill, you know.
Right.
So you see what you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. And I, like I said, I've got some family members dealing with a few similar issues, not schizophrenia, and it's rough with that too. No matter what it is, it's you know, people look at you different, treat you different. So yeah.
Right, and that's the main thing, is how do you disclose your illness? Because sometimes when you tell people too soon, or, you know, like if they don't know you, like if you tell someone too soon, like strangers and stuff, there's definitely some people that are actually scared of you.
Yeah.
You know, they don't know how to take it when you tell them that.
Yeah, I bet.
So, but that's my goal, is to get rid of the stigma. But the main thing is medication, because you just can't have a good quality of life, you know, if you don't take medication. And then like, after you take the medication and you're stabilized on it, you can look back and remember some of the weird things you said and did not on medicine. So when you're on medicine, then you think clearly again, you know. So
I bet. All right. Well, Lori, I appreciate you talking about all of this. Everybody just stay tuned. We're going to have a second half. We're going to talk some more author stuff. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to Discovered Wordsmiths. Come back next week and listen to another author discuss the road they've traveled, and maybe, sometime in the near future, it might be you.